Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, and from Him do we seek help. All praise be to God, the sustainer of all the worlds, and blessings and peace be upon our Master Muhammad, and on all his family and companions. Brother, you wanted a few words of advice from me, so listen to a few truths included in 8 short stories, which, since you're a soldier, are in the form of comparisons of a military nature. I consider my own soul to need advice more than anyone, and at one time I addressed my soul at some length with 8 words inspired by 8 verses of the Quran from which I had benefited. Now I shall address my soul with the same words but briefly and in the language of ordinary people. Whoever wishes may listen together with me. The first word, Bismillah, in the name of God, is the start of all things good. We too shall start with it. Now, O my soul, just as this blessed phrase is a mark of Islam, so too it is constantly recited by all beings through their tongues of disposition. If you want to know what an inexhaustible strength, what an unending source of bounty is Bismillah, listen to the following story, which is in the form of a comparison. It goes like this. Someone who makes a journey through the deserts of Arabia has to travel in the name of a tribal chief and enter under his protection. For in this way he may be saved from the assaults of bandits and secure his needs. On his own, he will perish in the face of innumerable enemies and needs. And so 2 men went on such a journey and entered the desert. One of them was modest and humble, the other proud and conceited. The humble man assumed the name of a tribal chief, while the proud man did not. The first traveled safely wherever he went. If he encountered bandits, he said, "I'm traveling in the name of such and such tribal leader," and they did not molest him. If he came to some tents, he was treated respectfully due to the name. But the proud man suffered indescribable calamities throughout his journey. He both trembled before everything and begged from everything. He was abased and became an object of scorn. My proud soul, you are the traveler, and this world is a desert. Your impotence and poverty have no limit, and your enemies and needs are endless. Since it is thus, take the name of the pre-eternal ruler and post-eternal lord of the desert, and be saved from begging before whole universe and trembling before every event. Yes, this phrase is a treasury so blessed that your infinity impotence and poverty bind you to an infinity power and mercy. It makes your impotence and poverty a most acceptable intercessor at the court of one all-powerful and compassionate. The person who acts saying, "In the name of God," resembles someone who enrolls in the army. He acts in the name of the government. He has fear of no one. He speaks, performs every matter, and withstands everything in the name of the law and the name of the government. At the beginning, we said that all beings say, "In the name of God," through the tongue of disposition. Is that so? Indeed, it is so. If you were to see that a single person had come and had driven all the inhabitants of a town to a place by force and compelled them to work, you would be certain that he had not acted in his own name and through his own power, but was a soldier acting in the name of the government and relying on the power of the king. In the same way, all things act in the name of Almighty God. For many things, like seeds and grains, bear huge trees on their heads. They raise loads like mountains. That means all trees say, "In the name of God." Fill their hands from the treasury of mercy and offer them to us. All gardens say, "In the name of God," and become cauldrons from the kitchens of divine power, in which are cooked numerous varieties of different foods. All blessed animals like cows, camels, sheep, and goats say, "In the name of God," and produce springs of milk from the abundance of mercy, offering us a most delicate and pure food like the water of life in the name of the provider. The roots and rootlets, soft as silk of plants, trees, and grasses say, in the name of God, and pierce and pass through hard rock and earth. Mentioning the name of God, the name of the most merciful, everything becomes subjected to them. The roots spreading through hard rock and earth and producing fruits as easily as a branch spread through the air and produced fruits, and the delicate green leaves retaining their moisture for months in the face of extreme heat, deal a slap in the mouths of naturalists and jab a finger in their blind eyes, saying, even heat and hardness, in which you most trust, are under a command. For like the staff of Moses, each of those silken rootlets conforms to the command of, and we said, O Moses, strike the rock with your staff, and splits the rock, and the delicate leaves fine as a cigarette paper recite the verse. O fire, be coolness and peace. Against the heat of the fire is like the members of Abraham. Since all things say, in the name of God, and bearing God's bounties in God's name, give them to us. We too should say, in the name of God. We should give in the name of God, and take in the name of God, and we should not take from heedless people who neglect to give in God's name. Question: we give a prize to people who are like trade bearers. So what prize does God want? Who is the true owner? The answer: yes, the price the true best tower of bounties wants in return for those valuable bounties and goods is three things. One is remembrance, another is thanks, and the other is reflection. Saying in the name of God at the start is remembrance, and all praise be to God at the end is thanks. And perceiving and thinking of those bounties which are priceless wonders of art, being miracles of power of the unique and eternally beloved one and gifts of his mercy is reflection. However foolish it is to kiss the foot of a lowly man who conveys to you the precious gift of a king, and not to recognize the gift's owner, it is 1,000 times more foolish to praise and love the apparent source of bounties and forget the true bestower of bounties. O my soul, if you do not wish to be foolish in that way, give in God's name, take in God's name, begin in God's name, and act in God's name. And that's the matter in a nutshell. The second station of the 14th flash. This, which has been included here because of its relevance, concerns 6 of the thousands of mysteries contained in the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. Note: a bright light from in the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, concerning divine mercy appeared to my dull mind from afar. I wanted to record it for myself in the form of notes, to hunt it down and capture it and circumscribe the light with 20 to 30 mysteries. But unfortunately I was not able to do this at the present time, and the 20 of 30 mysteries were reduced to 5 or 6. When I say, oh man, I mean myself. Although this lesson addresses my own soul in particular, I refer it as the second station of the 14th flash, for the approval of my Metaphysical brothers, in the hope that it may benefit those with whom I am connected spiritually and whose souls are more discerning than mine. This lesson looked to the heart more than the reason, and to spiritual pleasure and perception rather than rational proofs. In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, the Queen said, "Yes, chefs, here is delivered to me a letter worthy of respect. It is from Solomon, and is in the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate." A number of mysteries will be mentioned in the station. First mystery. I saw one manifestation of in the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, as follows. On the face of the universe, the face of the earth and the face of man are three stamps of dominicality, one within the other, and each showing samples of the others. The first is the great stamp of Godhead, which is manifested through the mutual assistance, cooperation, and embracing and corresponding to one another of beings in the totality of the universe. This looks to, in the name of God. The second is the great stamp of divine mercifulness, which is manifested through the mutual resemblance and proportion, order, harmony, favor, and compassion in the disposal, raising, and administration of plants and animals on the face of the earth. This looks to, in the name of God, the merciful. Then is the exalted stamp of divine compassionateness, which is manifested through the subtleties of divine beneficence, fine points of divine clemency, and rays of divine compassion on the face of man's comprehensive nature. This looks to the compassionate, in the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. That is to say, in the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate is the sacred title of three stamps of divine oneness, which form a luminous line on the page of the world, and a strong cord and shining filament that is by being revealed from above to the tip of, in the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, rests on man, the fruit of the universe and miniature copy of the world. It binds the lower world to the divine throne. It is a way for man to ascend to the human throne. Second mystery. In order not to overwhelm minds by divine unity, which is apparent in the boundless multiplicity of creatures, the Quran of miraculous exposition constantly points out the manifestation of divine oneness within divine unity. For example, the sun encompasses numberless things with its light. A truly extensive conceptual ability and comprehensive view is necessary to behold the sun itself in the totality of its light. So, lest the sun be forgotten, it is displayed in every shining object by means of its reflection, and in accordance with their capacities. All lustrous objects reflect the sun's attributes, such as its light and heat, and the seven colors in its light. Together with the manifestation of its essence, so too the sun attributes encompass all things affecting it. In exactly the same way, and God's is the highest similitude, but let there be no mistake in the comparison. Just as divine oneness and eternal besoftedness have a manifestation together with all the divine name in everything, in animate creatures in particular, and especially in man's mirror-like essence, so to be through divine unity, each of the divine names connected to beings encompasses all things. Thus, lest minds become overwhelmed by divine unity and hearts forget the most pure and holy essence, the Quran constantly draws attention to the stamp of divine oneness within divine unity. And that stamp, with its three salient points, is, in the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. Third mystery. What makes this boundless universe rejoice is clearly divine mercy. What illuminates this dark beings is self-evidently divine mercy. What fosters and raises creatures struggling with their endless needs is self-evidently again divine mercy. What causes this whole universe to be turned towards man, like a tree together with all its parts is turned towards its fruits, and causes it to look to him and run to his assistance is clearly divine mercy. What fills and illuminates boundless space and the empty, vacant world and makes it rejoice is self-evidently divine mercy. and what designates ephemeral man of eternity and makes him the address and beloved of pre-eternal and post-eternal one is self-evidently divine mercy. O man, since divine mercies are such a powerful, inviting, sweet, assisting, lovable truth, say, in the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. Adhere to this truth and be saved from absolute desolation and the pains of unending needs. Draw close to the throne of the pre-eternal and post-eternal monarch, and availing yourself to the compassionate and rays of divine mercy, become his address, friend, and beloved. All the realms of beings in the universe are purposefully gathered around man and are made to hasten to meet all his needs with the utmost order and wisdom, which clearly arises from one of two situations. Either each realm of beings knows man, obeys him, and runs to help him, which, just as it is completely irrational, is also impossible in many respects, or an absolutely impotent being like man has to opposes the power of the mightiest absolute sovereign, or this assistance occurs through the knowledge of an absolutely powerful one behind the veil of the universe. That is to say, it is not that the different beings in the universe know man, but that they are the evidence of a knowing, compassionate one who is acquainted with him and knows him. O man, come to your senses. Is it at all possible that the all-glorious one who causes all these varieties of creatures to turn towards you and stretch out their hands to assist you and to say, "Here we are," in the face of your needs? Is it possible that he does not know you, is not acquainted with you, does not see you? Since he does know you, he informs you that he knows you through his mercy, so you should know him too, and with respect let him know that you know him, and understand with certainty that what subjugates the vast universe to an absolutely weak, absolutely impotent, absolutely needy, ephemeral, insignificant creature like you, and dispatches it to assist you, is the truth of divine mercy, which comprises wisdom, favor, knowledge, and power. Most certainly, a mercy such as this requires universal and sincere thanks, and earns a genuine respect. Therefore say, in the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, which is the interpreter and expression of such sincere thanks and genuine respect. Make it the means of attaining to the mercy and an intercessor at the court of the all-merciful one. The existence and reality of divine mercy are as clear as the sun, for just as a woven tapestry centered on one point is formed by the order and situation of the threads of its warp and weft coming from all directions, so to the luminous threads extending from the manifestation of 1,001 divine names in the vast sphere of the universe weave such a seal of compassionateness, tapestry of clemency, and seal of benevolence within a stamp of mercy that it demonstrates itself to minds more brilliantly than the sun. The beauteous, all-merciful one who orders the sun and moon, the elements and minerals and plants and animals like the warp and weft of a vast woven tapestry through the rays of his 1,001 names, and causes them to serve life, and demonstrates his compassion through the exceedingly sweet and self-sacrificing compassion of mothers, plant and animal, and subjugates animate creatures to human life, and form that demonstrates man's importance, and a most lovely large tapestry of divine dominicality, and manifests his brilliant mercy. That most merciful one has, in the face of his own absolute lack of need, made his mercy an acceptable intercessor for animate creatures and man. O man, if you are truly a human being, say, in the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. Find that intercessor for sure. It is clearly, self-evidently divine mercy, which is without forgetting or confusing any of them, raises, nurtures, and administers the innumerable plant of animal species on the earth at preciously the right time and with perfect order, wisdom, and beneficence, and stamps the seal of divine oneness on the face of the globe of the earth. The existence of divine mercy is as certain as the existence of the beings on the face of the earth. So do the beings offer evidence of its reality to their own number. Just as there is the seal of mercy and stamp of divine oneness on the face of the earth, so on the face of man nature is a stamp of divine mercy that is not inferior to the stamp of a compassion and vast stamp of mercy on the face of the universe. Simply, man has so comprehensive a nature. He is through the point of focus of 1,001 divine names. Oh man, is it at all possible that the one who gives you this face and places such a stamp of mercy and seal of oneness on it would leave you to your own devices, attach no importance to you, pay no attention to your actions, make the whole universe, which is turned towards you, futile and pointless, and make the tree of creation rotten and insignificant with decayed fruit? Would he cause his mercy to be denied, although it is as obvious as the sun, as well as his wisdom, which is as clearly as daylight, and neither of which can in any way be dubbed, nor are in any way deficient? God forbid. O man, understand that there is a way to ascend to the throne of divine mercy, and that is in the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. If you want to understand the importance of this ascent, look at the beginning of the 114 surahs of the Quran and a miraculous exposition, and at the beginning of all estimable books, and at the start of all good works. A clear proof of the God-determined grandeur of In the Name of God is that Imam Shafi's, one of the very foremost Islamic scholars, said, in the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, is only one verse, yet it was revealed 114 times in the Quran. Fourth mystery. In the face of the manifestation of divine unity within boundless multiplicity, declaring, You alone do we worship, is not sufficient for everyone. The mind wanders. One's heart would have to be as broad as the globe to observe the single one behind the unity in the totality of beings, and to say, You alone do we worship, and from You alone do we seek help, in consequence, so that the seal of divine oneness should be apparent on all species and realms of being, just as it's shown clearly on individual objects, and that they should call the mind the single one. It is shown within the stamp of divine mercy. Thus, everyone at every level may turn to the most pure and holy one and saying, You alone do we worship, and from You alone do we seek help. Address him directly. It is in order to express this mighty mystery and clearly point out the seal of divine oneness that all-wise Quran suddenly mentions the smallest sphere and most particular matter when describing the vastest sphere of the universe. For example, the creation of the heavens and the earth, that is so that the mind does not wander, nor the heart drown, and the spirit may find its true object of worship directly. While mentioning the creation of the heavens and earth, it opens the discussions of man's creation and voice, and the subtle details of the bounties and wisdom in his future. For example, this truth is demonstrated in miraculous fashion by the verse, And among his signs is the creation of the heavens and the earth, and the variations in your language and your colors. Within innumerable creatures and infinite multiplicity, there are stamps of unity like concentric circles of many sorts of degrees from the greatest stamp to the smallest. But however clear the unity is, it is still unity within multiplicity. It does not truly address observers. Hence, there has to be the stamp of divine oneness behind unity, so that unity does not call the mind multiplicity, and before the most pure and holy one, a way may be opened up to the heart directly. Furthermore, a truly captivating design, shining light, agreeable sweetness, pleasing beauty, and powerful truth, which is stamp of divine mercy and seal of divine compassion, has been placed on the stamp of divine oneness in order to direct gazes toward it and attract hearts. Yes, it is the strength of the mercy that attracts the gazes of conscientious beings, draws them to it, and causes them to reach the seal of oneness and observe the single one, and from that to truly manifest and the address of you alone do we worship, and from you alone do we seek help. It is because in the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, is the index of Surah Al-Fatiha and a concise summary of the Quran that is the sign and interpreter of the mighty mystery. The person who clasps it may travel through the levels of divine mercy, and the person who causes this interpreter to speak may learn about the mysteries of divine mercy and behold the lights of divine compassion and pity. Fifth mystery. There's a hadith which goes something like this. God created man in the form of the most merciful. It has been interpreted by some Sufis in an extraordinary way, unfitting for the tenets of belief. Some of them who were ecstatics even considered man's spiritual nature to be in the form of the all-merciful, since ecstatics are mostly immersed in contemplation and confused, they are perhaps to be excused in holding views contrary to reality. But on consideration, people in their right senses cannot accept ideas of theirs that are contrary to the fundamentals of belief. If they do, they are in error. Indeed, the most pure and holy deity, who administers with order the whole universe as though it were a palace or house, and spins the stars as though they were particles, and causes them to travel through space with wisdom and ease, and employs minute particles as though they were orderly officials, has no partner, match, opposite, or equal. So too, according to the meaning of the verse, there is nothing whatever like unto him, and he hears and sees all things. He has no form, like or peer, and there is nothing resembling him or similar to him. However, according to the meaning of the following verse and its parabolic comparison, and he is the highest similitude in the heavens and the earth, and he is exalted in might, full of wisdom. His actions, attributes, and names may be considered, that is to say, allegory and comparison may be used in connection with his actions. One of the many things intended by the above-mentioned hadith is, man is in a form that displays the divine name of all-merciful in its entirety. Yes, as we explained before, the divine name of all-merciful is manifested through the rays of 1,001 names on the face of the universe, and is apparent through the innumerable manifestation of God's absolute dominicality on the face of the earth. Similarly, its complete manifestation is apparent in a small measure in man's comprehensive form, the same as on the faces of the earth and universe. The hadith suggests also that the evidence of the necessarily existent one offered by such proofs, mirrors, and manifestation of the most merciful as animate creatures and man are so certain, clear, and obvious that just as it may be said of a shining mirror which reflects the image of the sun, the mirror is the sun, indicating the clarity of its brilliance and evidence, so it has been said and may be said, man is in the form of all merciful one, indicating the clarity of his evidence and completeness of his relation. It is in consequence of this mystery that the more moderate of those who believed in the unity of existence said, there is no existence but he, as a way of expressing the clarity of this evidence and perfection of the relation. O God, O most merciful one, most compassionate one, for the sake of, in the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, have mercy on us as befits your compassionateness, and follow us to understand the mysteries of, in the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, as befits your mercifulness. Amen. Sixth mystery. O unhappy man, afflicted by boundless impotence and endless wants, see from the following how valuable and acceptable an intercessor is divine mercy. For it is a way to know the all-glorious sovereign in woe's army. Both the stars and minute particles serve together in perfect order and obedience. The glorious monarch of pre-eternity and post-eternity, who is self-sufficient and utterly without need. He is rich without limit and in no way in need of the universe and its beings. The whole cosmos is under his command and direction, utterly obedient beneath his majesty and grandeur, submissive before his sublimity. That is divine mercy for you. Oh man, it raises you to the presence of the one who lacks all need, the eternal sovereign, and makes you his friend, address, and well-loved servant. But just as you can not reach the sun and are far from it, although it fills your mirror with its light, reflection, and manifestation, and you can in no way draw near to it. In the same way, you are infinitely distant from the most pure and holy one, the Son of pre-eternity and post-eternity, and cannot draw near to him, but the light of his mercy brings him nearer to us. Oh man, anyone who finds this mercy finds an eternally unfailing treasury of light, and the way to find it is by following the practices of the most noble messenger, peace and blessings be upon him, who was the most brilliant exemplar and representative of mercy, its most eloquent tongue and herald, and was described in the Quran as a mercy to all the worlds. The way to attain to this embodiment of mercy is a mercy to all the worlds is to utter the prayer calling down God's blessings upon him. Indeed, the meaning of this prayer is mercy. As a prayer of mercy for that living embodiment of divine mercy, it is a means of reaching the mercy to all the worlds. So make this prayer the means to the mercy to all the worlds for yourself, and at the same time make him the means of reaching the mercy of the most merciful one. The whole Muslim community in all its vastness uttering this prayer, which is synonymous with mercy for the mercy to all the worlds, proves in brilliant fashion that a precious gift is divine mercy, and how broad it is sphere. To conclude, just as the most precious jewel in the treasury of mercy is the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, its doorkeeper, so its first key, in the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, and its most easy key to prayer for the Prophet. O God, through the truth of in the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, grant blessings and peace to the one whom you sent as a mercy to all the worlds as befits your mercy, and in veneration of him, and to all his family and companions, and grant us mercy so as to make us free of want for the mercy of any other than you from among your creatures. Amen. Glory be unto you. We have no knowledge save that which you have taught us. Indeed, you are all-knowing, all-wise. The second word. In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, those who believe in the unseen. If you want to understand what great happiness and bounty, what great pleasure and ease are to be found in believing God, listen to this story, which is in the form of a compassion. One time, two men went on a journey for both pleasure and business. One set off in a selfish, inauspicious direction, and the other on a godly, propitious way. Since the selfish man was both conceited, self-centered, and pessimistic, he ended up in what seemed to him to be a most wicked country due to his pessimism. He looked around everywhere, saw the powerless and the unfortunate lamenting in the grasp of fearsome, bullying tyrants, weeping at their destruction. He saw the same grievous, painful situation in all the places he traveled. The whole country took on the form of a house of mourning apart from becoming drunk. He could find no way of not noticing this grievous and somber situation, for everyone seemed to him to be an enemy and foreign, and all around he was horrible corpses and despairing, weeping orphans. His conscience was in a state of torment. The other man was godly, devout, fair-minded, and with fine morals, so that country he came to was most excellent in his view. This good man saw universal rejoicing in the land he had entered. Everywhere was a joyful festival, a place for the remembrance of God overflowing with rapture and happiness. Everyone seemed to him a friend and relation. Throughout the country he saw the festive celebrations of a general discharge from duties, accompanied by cries of good wishes and thanks. He also heard the sound of a drum and band for the enlistment of soldiers, with happy calls of "God is most great, and there is no God but God." Rather than being grieved at the suffering of both himself and all the people like the first miserable man, the fortunate man was pleased and happy at both his own joy and that of all the inhabitants. Furthermore, he was able to do some profitable trade. He offered thanks to God. After some while he returned and came across the other man. He understood his condition and said to him, "You were out of your mind. The ugliness within you must have been reflected on the outer world, so that you imagined laughter to be weeping, and the discharge from duties to be sack and pillage. Come to your senses and purify your heart, so that the calamitous veil is raised from your eyes and you can see the truth. For the country of an utterly just, compassionate, beneficent, powerful, order-loving, and kind king could not be as you imagined, nor could a country which demonstrate this number of clear signs of progress and achievement." The unhappy man later come to his senses and repented. He said, "Yes, I was crazy through drink. May God be pleased with you. You have saved me from a hellish state. O my soul, now know that the first man represents an unbeliever or someone depraved and heedless. In his view, the world is a house of universal mourning. All living creatures are orphans, weeping at the blows of death and separation. Man and the animals are alone with and without ties, being ripped apart by the talons of the appointed hour. Mighty beings like the mountains and oceans are like horrendous, lifeless corpses. Many grievous, crushing, terrifying deletions like this arise from his unbelief and misguidance, and torment him. As for the other man, he is a believer. He recognizes and affirms Almighty God. In his view, the world is a body where the names of the All-Merciful One are constantly recited, a place of instruction for man and the animals, and a field of examination for man and jinn. All animal and human deaths are a demobilization, Those who have completed their duties of life depart from the transient world for another, happy and trouble-free world, so that place may be made for new officials to come and work. The birth of animals and humans marks their enlistment into the army, their being taken under arms, and the start of their duties. Each living being is a joyful regular soldier and honest contented official, and all voices are either glorification of God and the recitation of his names at the outset of their duties, and the thanks and rejoicing at their ceasing work, or the songs arising from their joy at working. In the view of the believer, all beings are the friendly servants, amiable officials, and agreeable books of his most generous Lord and all compassionate owner. A very many more subtle, exalted, pleasurable, and sweet truth like this become manifest and appear from his belief. That is to say, belief in God bears the seed of what is in effect a tuba tree of paradise, while unbelief conceals the seed of a zakum tree of hell. That means that salvation and security are only to be found in Islam and belief, in which case we should continually say, Praise be to God for the religion of Islam and perfect belief. The third word. In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. O you people, worship. If you want to understand what great profit and happiness lie in worship, and what great loss and ruin lie in vice and dissipation, listen to and take heed of the following story, which is in the form of a comparison. One time, 2 soldiers received orders to proceed to a distant city. They set off and traveled together until the road forked. At the fork was a man who said to them, The road on the right causes no loss at all, and 9 out of 10 of those who take it receive an high profit and experience great case, while the road on the left provides no advantage, and 9 out of 10 of its travelers make a loss, but they are the same as regards distance. Only there is one difference. Those who take the left-hand road, which has no rules and no one in authority, travel without baggage and arms. They feel an apparent lightness and deceptive easy, whereas those traveling on the right-hand road, which is under military order, are compelled to carry a kit bag full of nutritious rations for okas, or so in weight, and superb army rifle of about 2 kayas, which will overpower and rout every enemy. After the 2 soldiers has listened to what the instructive man had to say, the fortunate one took the road to the right. He loaded the weight of 1 batman onto his back, but his heart and spirit were saved from thousands of batmans of fear and feeling obligate to others. As for the other luckless soldier, he left the army. He did not want to conform to the order, and he went off to the left. He was released from bearing a load of 1 batman, but his heart was constricted by thousands of batmans of indebtedness, and his spirit crushed by innumerable fears. He proceeded on his way both begging from everyone and trembling before every object and every event until he reached his destination, and there he was punished as a mutineer and a deserter. As for the soldier who loved the order of the army, had guarded his kit bag and rifle, and taken the right-hand road, he had gone on his way being obligate to no one, fearing no one, and with an easy heart and conscience until he reached the city he was seeking. There he received a reward worthy of an honorable soldier who had carried out his duty faithfully. O rebellious soul! Know that one of those two travelers represents those who submit to the divine law, while the other represents the rebellious and those who follow their own desires. The road is the road of life, which comes from the spirit world, passes through the grave, and carries on to the hereafter. As for the kickback and rival, there are worship and fear of God. There is an apparent burden in worship, but there is an ease and lightness in its meaning that defies description. For in the prescribed prayers, the worshipper declares a bear witness that there is no God but God. That is to say, he finds the door of a treasury of mercy in everything because he is believing and saying, there is no creator and provider other than him. Harm and benefit are his ends. He is both all-wise. He does not in vain, and he is all-compassionate. His bounty and mercy are abundant, and he knocks on the door with his supplication. Moreover, he sees that everything is subjugated to the command of his own sustainer, so he takes refuge in him. He places his trust in him and relies on him, and is fortified against every disaster. His belief gives him complete confidence. Indeed, like with every true virtue, the source of courage is belief in God and worship, and as with every iniquity, the source of cowardice is misguidance. In fact, for a worshipper with a truly illuminated heart, it is possible that even if the globe of the earth became a bomb and exploded, it would not frighten him. He would watch it with pleasurable wonder as a marvel of the eternally besoft one's power. But when a famous degenerate philosopher with a so-called enlightened mind but no heart saw a comet in the sky, he trembled on the ground and exclaimed anxiously, "Isn't that comet going to hit the earth?" On one occasion, America was quaking with fear at such a comet, and many people left their homes in the middle of the night. Yes, although man is in need of numberless things, his capital is a nothing, and although he is subject to endless calamities, his power too is as nothing. Simply, his capital and power extend only as far as his hand can reach. However, his hopes, desires, pains, and tribulations reach as far as the eye and the imagination can stretch. Anyone who is not totally blind can see and understand that what a great profit, happiness, and bounty for the human spirit, which is thus impotent and weak and needly and wanting, are worship, affirmation of God's unity, and reliance on God and submission to Him. It is obvious that a safe way is preferable to a harmful way, even if the possibility of its safety is only 1 in 10. But on the way of worship, which our matter here, there is a 9 out of 10 possibility of its leading to treasury of eternal happiness, as well as its being saved, while it is established by the testimony which is at the degree of consensus of innumerable experts and witnesses that besides being without benefit and the desolate even confess to this, the way of vice and dissipation and in eternal misery, according to the reports of those who have uncovered the mysteries of creation, this is absolutely certain. In short, like that of the hereafter, happiness in this world lies in worship and being a soldier for Almighty God, in which case we should constantly say, praise be to God for obedience to Him and success, and we should thank Him that we are Muslims. The fourth word. In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. The prescribed prayers are the pillar of religion. If you want to understand with the certainty that 2 plus 2 equals 4 just how valuable and important are the prescribed prayers, and with that little expensive they are gained, and how crazy and harmful is the person who neglects them, pay attention to the following story, which is in the form of a compassion. One time, a mighty ruler gave each of 2 of his servants 24 gold pieces and sent them to a settler on one of his rich royal farms 2 months' distance away. Use this money for your tickets, he commanded them, and buy whatever is necessary for your house there with it. There is a station 1 day's distance from the farm, And there's both road transport and a railway and boats and aeroplanes. They can be benefited from according to your capital. The two servants set off after receiving these instructions. One of them was fortunate so that he spent a small amount of money on the way to the station, and included in that expense was some business so profitable and pleasing to his master that his capital increased 1,000-fold. As for the other servant, since he was luckless and a layabouts, he spent 23 pieces of gold on the way to the station, wasting it on gambling and amusements. A single gold piece remained. His friends said to him, "Spend this last gold on a ticket so that you will not have to walk the long journey and starve. Moreover, our master is generous. Perhaps he will take a pity on you and forgive you your faults, and put you on an aeroplane as well. Then we shall reach where we are going to live in one day. Otherwise, you will be compelled to walk alone and hungry across a desert which takes 2 months to cross." The most unintelligent person can understand how foolish, harmful, and senseless we would be if out of obstinacy he did not spend that single remaining gold piece on a ticket, which is like the key to a treasury, and instead spent it on vice for passing pleasure. Is that not so? O you how do not perform the prescribed prayers? And O my soul, which does not like to pray? The ruler in the compassion is our sustainer, our creator. Of the two traveling servants, one represents the devout who perform their prayers with fervor, and the other the heedless who neglect their prayers. The 24 pieces of gold are life in every 24-hour day, and the royal domain is paradise. As for the station, that is the grave, while the journey is man's passage to the grave, and on the resurrection and the hereafter. Men cover that long journey to different degrees according to their actions and the strength of their fear of God. Some of the truly devout have crossed 1,000-year distance in a day like lightning, and some have traversed a 50,000-year distance in a day with the speed of imagination. The Quran of mighty stature alludes to this truth with 2 of its verses. The ticket in the compassion represents the prescribed prayers. A single hour a day is sufficient for the 5 prayers together with taking the ablutions. So what a loss a person makes who spends 23 hours on this fleeting worldly life and fails to spend 1 hour on the long life of the hereafter. How he wrongs his own self, how unreasonable he behaves. For would not anyone who considers himself to be reasonable understand how contrary to reason and wisdom such a person conducts, and how far from reason he has become, if thinking it reasonable, he gives half of his property to a lottery in which 1,000 people are participating, and the possibility of winning is 1 in 1,000, and does not give not give 1/24 of it to an eternal treasury where the possibility of winning has been verified and 99 out of 100. Moreover, the spirit, the heart, and the mind find great ease in prayer, and it is not trying for the body. Furthermore, with the right intention, all the other acts of someone who performs the prescribed prayers become like worship. He can make over the whole capital of his life to the hereafter in this way. He can make his transient life permanent in one respect. The 5th word, in the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. Indeed, God is with those who fear him and those who do good. If you want to see what a truly human duty and what a natural, appropriate result of man's creation, it is to perform to prescribed prayers and not to commit serious sins. Listen to and take heed of the following compassion. Once, at a time of general mobilization, 2 soldiers found themselves together in a regiment. One was well trained and conscientious, the other a raw, restrained, and self-centered. The conscientious soldier concentrated on training and the war, and did not give a thought to rations and provisions, for he knew that it was the state's duty to feed and equip him, treat him if he was ill, and even to put the food in his mouth if the need arose. He knew that his essential duty was to train and fight, but he would also attend to some of the rations and equipment as part of his work. He would boil up the saucepans, wash up the mess tins, and bring them. If it was then asked him, "What are you doing?" he would reply, "I'm doing fatish duty for the state." He would not say, "I'm working for my living." The raw recruit, however, was fond of his stomach and paid no attention to training and the war. "That is the state's business. What is to me?" he would say. He thought constantly of his livelihood, and pursuing it would leave the regiment and go to the market to the shopping. One day his well-trained friend said to him, "Your basic duty is training and fighting, brother. You were brought here for that. Trust in the king. He will not let you go hungry. That is his duty. In a way, you are powerless and wanting. You cannot feed yourself everywhere, and this is a time of mobilization and war. He will tell you that you are mutinous and will punish you. Yes, there are two duties which concern us. One is the king's duty. Sometimes we do his fatish duties and he feeds us for it. The other is our duty, that is training and fighting, and sometimes the king helps us with it." Of course, you will understand in what danger layabouts soldier would be if he did not pay attention to the striving, well-trained one. Oh, my lazy soul, that turbulent place of war is this stormy worldly life, and the army divided into regiments, human society. The regiment in the compassion is the community of Islam in this century. One of the two soldiers is a devout Muslim who knows the obligations of his religion and performs them, and struggles with Satan and his own soul in order to give up serious misdoings and not to commit sins, while the other is degenerate wrongdoer who is so immersed in the struggle for livelihood that he casts aspersions on true provider, abandons his religious obligations, and commits any sins that come his way as he makes his living. As for the training and instruction, it is foremost the prescribed prayers and worship, and the war is the struggle against the soul and its desires, and against the Satans among jinn and man, to deliver them from sin and bad morals, and save the heart and spirit from eternal perdition. And the first of two duties is to give life and sustain it, while the order is to worship and beseech the giver and sustainer of life. It is trust in him and rely on him. Indeed, however made the best taught life, which is a most brilliant miracle of the eternally besoft one's art and a wonder of dominical wisdom, is the one who maintains and perpetuates it through sustenance. It cannot be another. Do you want proof? The most impotent and stupid animals are the best nourished, like fish and worms and fruit, and it is the most helpless, delicate creatures who have the choicest food, like infants and the young of all species. For sure, it is enough to compare fish with foxes, newly born animals with wild beasts, and trees with animals, in order to understand that licit food is obtained not through power and will, but through impotence and helplessness. That is to say, someone who gives up performing the prescribed prayer because of the struggle for livelihood resembles the soldier who abandoned his training and trench and went and begged in the market. But to seek one's ration from the kitchens of the all-generous provider mercy after performing the prayer, and to go oneself so as not to be burdened on others fine and manly. It too is a sort of worship. Furthermore, man's nature and spiritual faculties show that He's created for worship, for in respect of the power and actions necessary for the life of this world, he cannot compete with the most inferior sparrow, while in respect of knowledge and need and worship and supplication which are necessary for spiritual life and the life of the hereafter, he is like the monarch and commander of the animals. Oh my soul, if you make the life of this world the aim of your life and work constantly for that, you will become like the lowest sparrow. But if you make this life of the hereafter your aim and end, and make this life the means of it and its tillage, and strive in accordance with it, then you will be like a lofty commander of the animals, and a pitied and suppliant servant of Almighty God, and his honored and respected guest. Those are two ways open to you. You can choose whichever you wish. So ask for guidance and success from the most compassionate of the compassionate. The sixth word. In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. Verily God has purchased from the believers their persons and their property, that paradise might be theirs. If you wish to understand how profitable a trade is it, and how honorable rank to sell one's person and property to God, to be his slave and his soldier, then listen to the following comparison. Once a king entrusted each of two of his subjects with an estate, including all necessary workshops, machineries, horses, weapons, and so forth. But since it was a tempestuous and war-ridden age, nothing enjoyed stability. It was destined either to disappear or to change. The king in his infinite mercy sent a most noble lieutenant to the two men, and by means of a compassionate decree conveyed the following to them. Sell me the property you now hold in trust, so that I may keep it for you. Let it not be destroyed for no purpose. After the wars are over, I will return it to you in a better condition than before. I will regard the trust as your property and pay you a high price for it. As for the machinery and the tools in the workshop, they will be used in my name and at my workbench, but the price and the fee for their use shall be increased 1,000-fold. You will receive all the profit that assures. You are indigent and resources and unable to provide the cost of this great task. So let me assume the provision of all expenses and equipment and give you all the income and the profit. You shall keep it until the time of demobilization. So see the 5 ways in which you shall profit. Now, if you do not sell me the property, you can see that no one is able to preserve what he possesses, and you too will lose what you know how. It will go for nothing, and you will lose the high price I offer, the delicate and precious tools and scales. The precious metals awaiting to be used will also lose all value. You will have to trouble and concern of administering and preserving, but at the same time be punished for betraying your trust. So see the 5 ways in which you may lose. Moreover, if you sell the property to me, you become my soldier and act in my name. Instead of a common prisoner or irregular soldier, you will be the free lieutenant of an exalted monarch. After they had listened to this gracious decree, the more intelligent of the two men said, By all means, I am proud and happy to sell. I offer thanks 1,000-fold. But the other was arrogant, selfish, and dissipated. His soul and become as proud as the Pharaoh, as if he was to stay eternally on that estate. He ignored the earthquakes and tumults of this world. He said, No, who is the king? I won't sell my property, nor spoil my enjoyment. After a short time, the first man reached so high a rank that everyone envied his state. He received the favor of the king and lived happily in the king's own palace. The other, by contrast, fell into such a state that everyone pitied him, but also said he deserved it, For as a result of his error, his happiness and property departed, and he suffered punishment and torment. O soul, full of caprices, look at the face of truth through the telescope of this parable. As for the king, he is the monarch of pre-eternity and post-eternity, your sustainer and creator. The estates, machinery, tools, and scales are your positions while in life's fold. Your body, spirit, and heart within those positions, and your outward and inward senses such as the eye and the tongue, intelligence and imagination. As for the most noble lieutenant, it is the noble messenger of God, and the most wise Distri is the wise Quran, which describes the trade we are discussing in the verse. Verily God was purchased from the believers their persons and property, that paradise might be theirs. The surging field of battle is the tempestuous surface of the world, which ceaselessly changes, dissolves, and reforms, and causes every man to think. Since everything will leave our hands, will perish and be lost, is there no way in which we can transform it into something eternal and preserve it? While engaged in these thoughts, he suddenly hears the heavenly voice of the Quran saying, "Indeed, there is a beautiful and easy way which contains 5 profits within itself." What is that way? To sell the trust received back to its true owner, such as sale yields profit 5-fold. The first profit. Transient property becomes everlasting for this waning life, when given to the eternal and self-subsistent Lord of glory and spent for his sake, will be transmuted into eternity. It will yield eternal fruits. The moments of one's life will apparently vanish and rot like kernels and seeds, but then the flowers of blessedness and auspiciousness will open and bloom in the realm of eternity, and each will also present a luminous and reassuring aspect in the intermediate realm. The second profit, the high price of paradise, is given in exchange. The third profit, the value of each lamp and each sense is increased 1,000-fold. The intelligence is, for example, like a tool. If you do not sell it to God Almighty, but rather employ it for the sake of the soul, it will become an ill-omened, noxious and debilitating tool that will burden your weak person with all the sad sorrows of the past and the terrifying fears of the future. It will descend to the rank of an inauspicious and destructive tool. It is for this reason that the sinful man will frequently resort to drunkenness or frivolous pleasure in order to escape the vexations and injuries of his intelligence. But if you sell your intelligence to its true owner and employ it on his behalf, then it will become like the key to a talisman, unlocking the infinite treasures of compassion and the vaults of wisdom that creation contains. It will thus rise to being a dominical guide, preparing its owner for eternal bliss. To take another example, the eye is one of the senses, a window through which the spirit looks out on this world. If you do not sell it to God Almighty, but rather employ it on behalf of the soul by gazing upon a handful of transient, impermanent beauties and sins, it will sink to the level of being a pander to lust and the concupiscence soul. But if you sell the eye to your all-seeing Maker and employ it on his behalf and with the limits traced out by him, then your eye will rise to the rank of a reader of the great book of being, a witness to the miracles of demonical art, a blessed bee sucking on the blossoms of mercy in the garden of this globe. Yet another example is that of the tongue and the sense of taste. If you do not sell it to your wise Creator, but employ it instead on behalf of the soul and for the sake of the stomach, it sinks and declines to the level of a gatekeeper at the stable of the stomach and watchman at its factory. But if you sell it to the generous provider, the sense of taste contained in the tongue will rise to the rank of a skilled overseer of the treasuries of divine compassion, a grateful inspector in the kitchens of God's eternal power. So look well, O intelligence. See the difference between a tool of destruction and the key to all being, and look carefully, O eye. See the difference between an abominable pander and a learned overseer of the divine library, and taste well, O tongue. See the difference between a stable doorkeeper or a factory watchman and the superintendent of the treasury of God's mercy. Compare all other tools and limbs to this, and then you will understand that in truth the believer acquires a nature worthy of paradise, and the unbeliever a nature conforming to hell. The reason for each of them attaining his respective value is that the believer, by virtue of his faith, uses the trust of his Creator on his behalf and within the limits traced out by him, whereas the unbeliever betrays the trust and employs it for sake of the instinctual soul. The fourth prophet. Man is helpless and exposed to numerous misfortunes. He is indigent and his needs are numerous. He is weak and the burden of life is most heavy. If he does not rely on the omnipotent one of glory, place his trust in him and confidently submit to him, his conscience will always be troubled. Fruitless torments, pains, and regrets will suffocate him and intoxicate him, or turn him into a beast. The fifth prophet. Those who have experienced illumination and had unveiled to them the true nature of things, the elect who have witnessed the truth, are all agreed that the exalted reward for all the worship and glorification of God performed by your members and instruments will be given to at the time of greatest needs, in the form of the fruits of paradise. If you spurn this trade with its fivefold profit, in addition to being deprived of its profit, you will suffer a fivefold loss. The first loss, the property and offspring to which you are so attached, the soul and its caprice that you worship, the youth and life with which you are infatuated, all will vanish and be lost. Your hands will be empty, but they will leave behind them sin and pain, fastened on your neck like a yoke. The second loss, you will suffer the penalty for betrayal of trust, for you will have wronged your own self by using the most precious tools on the most worthless objects. The third loss, by casting down all the precious faculties of man to a level much inferior to the animals, you will have insulted and transgressed against God's wisdom. The fourth loss, in your weakness and poverty you will have placed the heavy burden of life on your weak shoulders, and will constantly groan and lament beneath the blows of transience and separation. The fifth loss, you will have clothed in an ugly form fit to open the gates of hell in front of you, the fair gifts of the compassionate one, such as the intelligence, the heart, the eye, and the tongue, given to you to make preparation of the foundations of everlasting life and eternal happiness in the hereafter. Now is it so difficult to sell the trust? Is it so burdensome that many people shun the transaction? By no means. It is not in least burdensome, for the limits of the permissible are broad and are quite adequate for man's desire. There is no need to trespass on the forbidden. The duties imposed by God are light and few in number. To be the slave and soldiers of God is an indescribable, pleasurable honor. One's duty is simple: to act and embark on all things in God's name, like a soldier, to take and to give on God's behalf, to move and be still in accordance with His permission and law. If one falls short, then one should seek His forgiveness. Say, O Lord, forgive our faults and accept us as your slaves. Make us sure holders of your trust until the time comes when it's taken from us. Amen. And make petition unto Him. The seventh word. If you want to understand what valuable, difficulty resolving talismans are the two parts of the phrase "I believe in God and the last day," which solve both in the enigmatical riddle of creation and open the door of happiness for the human spirit, and what beneficial and creative medicines are reliance on your Creator and taking refuge in Him through patience and entreaty, and supplicating your provider through thanks, and what important, precious, shining tickets for the journey to eternity and provisions for the hereafter and lives for the grave are listening to the Quran, obeying its commands, performing the prescribed prayers, and giving up serious sins. Then listen and pay attention to this compassion. One time, a soldier fell into a most grave situation in the field of battle and examination and the round of profit and loss. It was as follows. The soldier was wounded with two deep and terrible wounds on his right and left sides, and behind him stood a huge lion as though waiting to attack him. Before him stood a gallows which was putting to death and annihilating all those he loved. It was awaiting him too. Besides this, he had a long journey before him. He was being exiled. As the unfortunate soldier pondered over his fearsome plight in despair, a kindly person shining with light like Qadir appeared. He said to him, "Do not despair. I shall give you 2 talismans and teach you them. If you use them properly, the lion will become a docile horse for you, and the gallows will turn into a swing for your pleasure and enjoyment. Also, I shall give you 2 medicines. If you follow the instructions, those 2 separating wounds will be transformed into the sweet scented flowers called the Rose of Muhammad. Also, I shall give you a ticket. With it you will be able to make a year's journey in a day, as though flying. If you do not believe me, experiment a bit, so that you can see it's true." The soldier did experiment a bit and affirmed that it was true. "Yes, that is the unfortunate sight, affirm it too, for I experimented and saw it was absolute true." Some time later, he saw a sly, debauched-looking man, sunning as the devil, coming from the left, bringing with him much ornamented finery, decorated pictures and fantasies, and many intoxicants. He stopped before the soldier and said, "Hey, come on, my friend. Let's go and drink and make merry. We can look at these pictures of beautiful girls, listen to the music and eat this tasty food." Then he asked him, What is it you are reciting under your breath?" "A talisman," came the reply. "Stop the incomprehensible nonsense. Let's not spoil our present fun." And he asked a second question, "What is that you have in your hand?" "Some medicine," the soldier replied. "Throw it away. You are healthy. There's nothing wrong with you. It is time to cheer." And he asked, "What is the piece of paper with 5 marks on it?" "It's a ticket and a rations card." Oh, tear them up, the man said. What need do we have of a journey this beautiful spring? We tried to persuade him with every sort of wile, and the poor soldier was even a bit persuaded. Yes, man can be deceived. I was deceived by just such stunning deceptions. Suddenly from the right came a voice like thunder. Beware! It said, do not be deceived. Say to the trickster, if you have the means to kill the lion behind me, remove the gallows from before me, repulse the things rounding my right and my left, and prevent the journey in front of me, then come on and do so. Show that you can and let us see it. Then say, come on, let's go and enjoy ourselves. Otherwise be silent. Speak in the same way as that Kadir-like God-inspired man. O my soul, which laughed in its youth and now weeps at this laughter. Now that the unfortunate soldier is you and man, the lion is the appointed hour. As for the gallows, it is death, this line, and separation through which in the alternation of night and day all friends bid farewell and are lost. Of the two ones, one is man's infinity and troublesome impotence, while the other is his grievous and boundless poverty. The exile and journey is the long journey of examination which passes from the world of spirits through the womb and childhood to old age, through the world and the grave and the intermediate realm to the resurrection and the bridge of Sirat. As for two talismans, they are belief in Almighty God and the hereafter. Yes, through the second sacred talisman, death takes on the form of a mastered horse, a steed to take believing man from the prison of this world to the gardens of paradise and the presence of the most merciful one. It is because of this that the wise who have seen death's reality have loved it. They have wanted it before it came, and through the talisman of belief in God, the passage of time, which is this line and separation, death and the sais and the gallows, takes on the form of the means to observe and contemplate with perfect pleasure the miracles of the all-glorious Maker's various multicolored, ever-renewed embroideries, the wonders of his power and the manifestations of his mercy. Yes, when mirrors reflecting the colors of the sun's light are changed and renewed, and the images of the cinema change, better and more beautiful scenes are formed. As for the two medicines, one is trusting in God and patents, and the other is relying on the power of one's Creator and having confidence in His wisdom. Is that the case? Indeed it is. What fear can a man have who, through the certificate of his impotence, relies on a monarch of the world with the power to command? Be, and it is. For in the face of the worst calamity, he says, verily to God do we belong, and verily to him is our return, and places his trust in his most compassionate sustainer. A person with knowledge of God takes pleasure from impotence, from fear of God. Yes, there is pleasure in fear. If a 12-month baby were sufficiently intelligent and it were asked him, what is most pleasurable and sweetest for you, he might well say, to realize my powerlessness and helplessness, and fearing my mother's gentle smack, to at the same time take refuge in her tender breast. But the compassion of all mothers is but a flash of the manifestation of divine mercy. It is for this reason that the wise have found such pleasure in impotence and fear of God, vehemently declaring themselves to be free of any strength and power, and have taken refuge in God through their powerlessness. They have made powerlessness and fear an intercessor for themselves. The second medicine is thanks and contentment and entreaty and supplication and relying on the mercy of the all-compassionate provider. Is that so? Yes, For how can poverty, want, and need be painful and burdensome for a guest for an all-generous and munificent one who makes the whole face of the earth a table of bounties and the spring of a bunch of flowers, and who places the flowers on the table and scatters them over it? Poverty and need take on the form of a pleasant appetite. The guest tries to increase his poverty in the same way he does his appetite. It is because of this that he wise have taken pride in want and poverty. But beware, do not misunderstand this. It means to be aware of one's poverty before God and to beseech Him, not to parade poverty before the people and assume the air of a beggar. As for the ticket and voucher, it is to perform the religious duties and foremost the prescribed prayers, and to give up serious sins. Is that so? Yes, it is. For according to the consensus of those who observe and have knowledge of the unseen, and those who uncover the mysteries of creation, the provision, light, and steed for the long dark road to post-eternity man only be obtained through complying with the commands of the Quran and avoiding what is prohibits. Science, philosophy, and art are worth nothing on that road. Their light reaches only as far as the door of the grave. O my lazy soul, how little and light and easy it is to perform the 5 daily prayers and give up the 7 deadly sins. If you have the faculty of reason and it is not a corrupted, understand how important and extensive are the results, fruits, and benefits. Say to the devil and that man who were encouraging you to indulge in vice and dissipation, if you have the means to kill death and cause dislike and transience to disappear from the world and remove poverty and impotence from man and close the door of the grave, then tell us and let us hear it. Otherwise be silent. The Quran reads the universe in the vast mosque of creation. Let us listen to it. Let us be illuminated with that light. Let us act according to its guidance, and let us recite it constantly. Yes, the Quran is the word. That is what they say of it. It is the Quran which is the truth and comes from the truth and says the truth and shows the truth and spreads luminous wisdom. The 8th word, in the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. God, there is no God but He, the ever-living, the self-subsistent. Verily, the religion before God is Islam. If you want to understand this world and man's spirit within the world and the nature and value of religion for man, and how the world is a prison if there is no true religion, and that without religion man becomes the most miserable of creatures, and that is, O God. And there is no God but the God that solved this world's talisman and delivered the human spirit from darkness. Then listen to and consider this comparison. Long ago, 2 brothers set off on a long journey. They continued on their way until the road forked. At the fork, they saw a serious-looking man and asked him, "Which road is good?" He told them, "On the road to the right one is compelled to comply with the law and order, but within that hardship is security and happiness. However, on the left-hand road there is freedom and no restraint, but within its freedom lie danger and wretchedness. How now the choice is yours." After listening to this saying, "I place my trust in God," the brother with a good character took the right road and conformed to the order and regulations. The other brother, who was immoral and a layabouth, chose the road the left just for the lack of restrictions. With our imaginations, we shall follow this man in his situation, which was apparently easy but in reality burdensome. Thus, This man went up hill and down dale until he found himself in a desolate wilderness. He suddenly heard a terrifying sound and saw that a great lion had come out of the forest and was about to attack him. He fled. He came across a waterless well 60 yards deep, and in his fear jumped into it. He fell halfway down it, where his hands meet a tree. He clung onto it. The tree, which was growing out of the walls of the well, had two roots. Two rats, one white and one black, were attacking and gnawing through them. He looked up and saw that the lion was awaiting at the top of the well like a sentry. He looked down and saw a ghastly dragon. It raised its head and drew it close to his food 30 yards above. Its mouth was as big as the mouth of the well. Then he looked at the well's walls and saw the stinging, poisonous vermin had gathered round him. He looked up at the mouth of the well and saw a fig tree, but this was not an ordinary tree. It bore the fruit of many different trees, from walnuts to pomegranates. Thus, due to his lack of thought and foolishness, the man did not understand that this was not just some ordinary matter. These things were not here by chance, and that there was mysterious secrets concealed in these strange beings, and he did not grasp that there was someone very powerful directing them. Now, although his heart, spirit, and mind were secretly weeping and wailing at this grievous situation, his evil commanding soul pretended that it was nothing. It closed its ears to the weeping of his ardent spirit, and, deceiving itself, started to eat the tree's fruits as though it was in a garden. But some of the fruits were poisonous and harmful. Almighty God says in a divine handeth, I am according to how my servants think of me. Thus, through his foolishness and lack of understanding, this unhappy man thought what he saw to be ordinary and the actual truth. So that is the way he was treated, and is treated, and will be treated. He neither dies so that he is safe from it, nor does he live. He is in such torment. Now we shall leave this ill-omened man in his torment and return, so that he may consider the situation of the other brother. This fortunate and intelligent person went on his way, but he suffered no distress like his brother, for due to his fine morals, he thought of good things, imagined good things. Everything was friendly and familiar to him, and he did not suffer any difficulty and hardship like his brother, for he knew the order and followed. He found it easy. He went on his way freely and in peace and security. Then he came across a garden in which were both lovely flowers and fruits, and since it was not looked after, rotting and filthy things. His brother had also entered such a garden, but he had noticed and occupied himself with the filthy things, and they had turned his stomach, so he had left it and moved on without being able to rest himself. But this man acted according to the rule, look on the good side of everything, and had paid no attention to the rotting things. He had benefited a lot from the good things, and taking a good rest, he had left and gone on his way. Later also, like the first brother, he had entered a vast desert, and had suddenly heard the roar of a lion which was attacking him. He was frightened, but not as much as his brother, for because of his good thoughts and positive attitude, he thought to himself, this desert had a ruler, and it is possible that this lion is a servant under the ruler's command. And one consolation, but he still fled until they came across an empty well 60 yards deep. He threw himself into it, like his brother. His hand clasped a tree halfway down, and he remained suspended in the air. He looked and saw the animals gnawing through the tree's two roots. He looked up and saw the lion, and looked down and saw the dragon. Just like his brother, he was seeing a most strange situation. He was terrified, like him, but his terror was 1,000 times less than his brother's, for his good morals had given him good thoughts, and good thoughts show the good side of everything. So, because of this, he thought as follows: these strange happenings are connected to someone. Also, it seems that they are acting in accordance with a command, in which case these matters contain a talisman. Yes, everything is happening at the command of a hidden ruler. Therefore, I am not alone. The hidden ruler is watching me, and he's testing me. He's impelling me somewhere for some purpose and inviting me there. Curiosity arising from the pleasant fear and disagreeable thoughts prompt me to say, I wonder who it is that is testing me, wants to make himself known, and is impelling me for some purpose on this strange road. Then love for the owner of the talisman arose out of the desire to know him, and from that love arose the desire to solve the talisman, and from that desire arose the will to acquire and qualities which would please and gratify, but it was bearing the fruits of thousands of trees. So then all his fear left him, for they understood that for certain the fig tree was a list, an index, an exhibition. The hidden ruler must have attached samples of the fruits in the garden to the tree through a miracle and with a talisman, and must have adorned the tree in a way that would point to each of the foods he had prepared for his guests. For there is no other way a single tree could produce the fruits of thousands of different trees. Then he began to entreat that he could be inspired with the key to the talisman. He called out, O ruler, O ruler of this place, I have happened upon you, and I take refuge with you. I am your servant, and I want to please you. I am searching for you. After he had made the supplication, the walls of the well suddenly parted, and a door opened onto a wonderful, pleasant, quiet garden. Indeed, the dragon's mouth was transformed into the door, and both it and the lion took on the forms of two servants. They invited him to enter. The lion even became a docile horse for him. O my lazy soul, and O my imaginary friend, come, let us compare the position of these two brothers so that we can see how good comes of good and evil comes to evil. Let us found it. Look, the unhappy traveler on the left road is all the time trembling with fear, waiting to enter the dragon's mouth, while the fortunate one is invited into a blooming, splendid garden full of fruit, and the unfortunate one's heart is being pounded by an awful terror and grievous fear, while the fortunate one is gazing at the observing strange things and delightful lessons. With a pleasant fear and loving knowledge, also the miserable one is suffering torments in desolation, despair, and loneliness, while the fortunate one is enjoying himself, full of hope, longing, and a sense of belonging. Furthermore, the unfortunate one sees himself as a prisoner subject to the attacks of wild beasts, while the fortunate one is an honored guest who is on friendly terms and enjoying himself with the strange servants of his generous host. Also, the unhappy one is hastening his torments by indulging in fruits which are apparently delicious but in fact poisonous. For the fruits are samples, there is permission to taste them so as to seek the originals and become customers for them, but there's no permission to devour them like an animal. But the fortunate one tastes them and understands the matter. He postpones eating them and takes pleasure in waiting. Moreover, the the unfortunate one is wronging himself through his lack of discernment. He's making the truth and situation which are as clear and bright as daylight into a dark and oppressive fear, into a hellish delusion. He does not deserve pity, nor does he have the right to complain to anyone. For example, if a person at a pleasant banquet in a beautiful garden in summer among his friends makes himself drunk through filthy intoxicants, then imagines himself hungry and naked in the middle of winter among wild animals and starts shouting out and crying, he does not deserve to be pitied. He's wronging himself and he's insulting his friends by imagining them to be wild beasts. Thus, the unfortunate brother is like this, but the fortunate one sees the truth and the truth is good. Through perceiving the beauty of the truth, the fortunate brother is being respectful towards the truth's owner, so he deserves his mercy. Thus, the meaning of the Quranic decree, now that evil is from yourself and good is from God, becomes clear. If you make a comparison of these differences in the same way, you will understand that the evil commanding soul of the first brother was prepared a sort of hell for him, while the good intention, goodwill, good character, and good thoughts of the other have allowed him to receive abundant bounty, experience true happiness and prosperity, and display shining virtue. O my soul, and O you who is listening to this story together with my soul, if you do not want to be the unfortunate brother and want to be the fortunate one, listen to the Quran, obey its decrees, adhere to them, and act according to them. If you have understood the truths in the compassion, you will be able to make them correspond to the truths of religion, the world, man, and belief in God. I shall say the important ones, then you deduce the finer points yourself. So look, of the two brothers, one is a believing spirit, a righteous heart, the other is an unbelieving spirit and depraved heart. Of the two roads, the one to the right is the way of the Quran and belief in God, while the left one is the road of revelation and denial. The garden on the road is man's fleeting life in human society and civilization, where good and evil, and things good and bad and clean and dirty are found side by side. The sensible person is he who acts according to the rule, take what is pleasant and clear and leave what is distressing and turbid, and goes on his way with tranquility of heart. As for the desert, it is the earth and this world, and the line is death and the appointed hour. The well is man's body and the time of his life, while its 60-year death points to the normal lifespan of 60 years, and the tree is the period of life and the substance of life. The two animals, one white and one black, are night and day. The dragon is the road to the intermediate realm and pavilion of the hereafter, whose mouth is the grave, but for the believer that mouth is the door opening from of a prison onto a garden. As for the poisonous vermin, they are the calamities of this world, but for the believer they are like gentle divine warnings and favors of the most merciful one to prevent him slipping off into the sleep of heedlessness. The fruits on the tree are the bounties of this world, which is absolute generous one has made in the form of a list of the bounties of the hereafter, and both as examples of them and warnings and samples inviting customers to the fruits of paradise, and the tree producing numerous different fruits, despite being a single tree, indicates the seal of the eternally besoft one's power, the stamp of divine dominicality, and the signet of the sovereignty of the Godhead. For to make everything from one thing, that is to make all plants and fruits from earth, and create all animals from a fluid, and to create all the limbs and organs of animal from a simple food, together with making everything one thing, that is Arts like weaving a simple skin and making flesh particle to each animal from the great variety of foods that animals eat is an inimitable stamp and seal epistolar to the ruler of pre-eternity and post-eternity, who is the single, eternally besoft one, for sure, to make one thing everything, and everything one thing is a sign, a mark, epistolar to the creator of all things, the one powerful over all things. As for the talisman, it is the mystery of the purpose of creation which is solved through the mystery of belief, and the key is there is not God but God, and God there is no God but He, the ever-living, the self-subsistent. The dragon's mouth being transformed into the door into the garden is a sign that also for the people of misguidance and rebellion the grave is a door opening. The desolation of oblivion and onto a grave distressing as a dungeon, as a dungeon and narrow as a dragon's stomach for the people of the Quran and believe it. It is a door which opens from the prison of the world onto the fields of immortality, from the arena of examination onto the gardens of paradise, and from the hardships of life onto the mercy of the all-merciful one. The savage lion turning into a friendly servant and a docile mount is a sign that also for the people of misguidance death is a bitter, eternal parting from all their loved ones, and the expulsion from the deceptive paradise of this world, and the entry in desolation and loneliness into the dungeon of the grave for the people of guidance and the Quran. It is the means of joining all their old friends and beloved ones who have already departed for the next world, and the means of returning there through homeland and abode of everlasting happiness. It is an invitation to the meadows of paradise from the prison of this world, and a time to receive the wage bestowed out of the generosity of the most merciful and compassionate one for services rendered to him, and a discharge from the hardship of duties of life, and a rest from the drill and instruction of worship and examination. In short, whoever makes the fleeting life his purpose and aim in the fact in hell, even if apparently in paradise, and whoever is turned in all seriousness towards eternal life receives the happiness of both worlds. However difficult and distressing this world is for him, since he sees it as the waiting room for paradise, he endures it and offers thanks in patents.